Zack received a year-end bonus of $500,000, yet he brought home a crocodile-skin Hermès bag worth $550,000 for me. I complained that he was wasting money, but he said, "You are the most important person to me. What's wrong with spending a little money on you?" This was already the 9th time this month that he had said those words to me. The smile on my face froze. Suddenly, I felt that he was cheating. Chapter 1. Just because he gave you a Hermès bag, you think he's cheating? My best friend Celine found it unbelievable. "Julia, I reasonably suspect that you asked me out today just to show off. A Hermès. You know, that's a Hermès. And crocodile skin too. Haven't you heard the saying? Where the money goes, the love goes." People say that if a man earns $10 and spends $9 on you, you should marry him. Your Zack earns 10 and spends 11 on you, yet you suspect he's cheating? Do you even have a conscience? I thought Celine made sense, but my heart still felt blocked. So I frowned tightly and spoke again. "But Zack has told me 9 times this month that I am the most important person to him." Celine stood up in anger. "I can't talk sense into you today. He hands over all his salary, reports in advance whenever he comes home after 8 at night, and never forgets to prepare gifts for every anniversary." Celine counted them one by one on her fingers, then declared firmly, "He's just confessed his love to you a few more times than usual, and you think something is wrong with him?" She poked my head and said bitterly, "I think there's something wrong with your head." Could it really be that there was something wrong with my head? That thought flashed through my mind, but I soon shook my head with certainty. No, there really is something wrong with him. I looked up at Celine, my tone resolute. "Zack is quiet and reserved. In the 10 years we've been together, the only romantic words he ever said to me were during his confession. Even his wedding vows were only, 'I'll treat you well.' A man like that repeated to me 9 times in a single month that I am the most important person to him. He is definitely feeling guilty." Chapter 2. Zack's MBTI was ESTJ. He valued tradition and order. He preferred structured environments. He was used to setting goals and solving problems with results as his orientation. So when he confirmed that he liked me, he created a 10-page mind map, breaking down in detail every step of pursuing me. I accidentally saw that chart. At the time, he was following the second step of the mind map and having a candlelit dinner with me. He had even thoughtfully prepared flowers for me. He temporarily went to the balcony to take a work call, leaving his laptop on the table. I accidentally knocked over the red wine and hurriedly grabbed tissues to wipe the keyboard. That was when I saw the chart. The first step on the chart was to pick me up and drop me off from work for 1 month. Zack had already done it. Last month, rain or shine, he picked me up and dropped me off from work, never giving me any chance to take a taxi by myself. But from the first day of this month, the ride suddenly stopped. I had been wondering what exactly had happened. Now I finally understood. It turned out that Zack had already moved on to the second step. Invite me to 5 candlelit dinners. In his eyes, pursuing me seemed to be something that followed rules and proceeded step by step. 2 steps could not be carried out at the same time. I was not angry. Instead, I found the silly side of him a little cute. I quickly flipped to the last page and saw Zack's final step. Propose under fireworks filling the sky and heart-shaped candlelight. My heart suddenly skipped a beat. So when Zack turned and walked toward me, a rare trace of panic appearing on his face, I could not help smiling. "Zack, the chart is fixed, but people are alive. I know best how I can be won over. So, do you want me to teach you?" It did not even take the full year in his plan for me to teach Zack how to pursue me. In just 3 short months, Zack and I started dating. I successfully trained him into a perfect, devoted, 24 filial piety level boyfriend. For every anniversary, he would ask my opinion in advance and give me gifts I liked. Rain or shine, he continued picking me up and dropping me off from work. As long as it was something related to me, it was the most important thing in the world, and he would never make excuses or shirk responsibility. After we got married, we became a legendary love story in our social circle. Everyone said they would rather believe a sow could climb a tree than believe Zack and Julia would divorce. In the eyes of the whole world, Zack loved me desperately. How could he possibly cheat? Chapter 3. But he really had cheated. Confirming it did not take long. Zack was a deputy director at a large law firm. After being promoted, He had focused most of his energy on management and business development, and he had not taken on any cases personally for nearly 3 years. But that day, when his assistant came to deliver case materials, I unexpectedly learned that he had made an exception and taken on a divorce case. I took the documents and lied. "I'll pass them on." The assistant hesitated. "But Zack mentioned this case to me," I said with a smile. "He hasn't been on the front line for more than 3 years. I can give him some suggestions." Only then did the assistant relax. After all, ever since Zack and I started dating, I had resigned from the rival firm opposite Zack's and joined the firm he worked at. Unlike him, I had always remained active on the front line, specializing in helping women with their cases. The case Zack took happened to be exactly the type I often handled. The client was named Regina. She was a 32-year-old full-time housewife with a 6-year-old son. The name felt vaguely familiar, but I could not remember when I had heard it. She had suffered domestic violence for years and hoped to divorce smoothly and make the man leave with nothing. The request was reasonable, but extremely difficult to achieve. It required strategy and time. I turned to the last page, thinking I would find a plan Zack had drawn up, like back when he pursued me, detailed down to what had to be done every day. But there was none. He had only scrawled a few words. Divorce immediately. Leave with nothing had been crossed out. It was changed to 50%. Then that was crossed out too and changed to 30%. He had not listed a step-by-step plan. He only wanted Regina to divorce as soon as possible. The sooner the better. For that, he was even willing to give in on property. But Zack had never been an impatient person. He was good at gradual planning, whether in love or in his career. This Regina made him anxious. Suddenly, I remembered where I had heard that name. Chapter 4. About 2 or 3 years ago, Zack had attended a high school reunion and gotten drunk. I went to pick him up and take him home. Outside the KTV, I heard someone shout Regina. A woman pushed the door open and came out, walking in a hurry. Zack followed closely behind her. He had always been steady and restrained, but his steps were extremely fast. In order to catch up to Regina, he did not even see me and brushed past me. He handed her a red envelope. It was very thick, visually estimated to contain around 100,000. Regina refused, but Zack forced it into her pocket, then tucked in her scarf for her. "It's cold outside." Regina thanked him with reddened eyes, then turned and left. Zack sighed and stood where he was, watching her back for a long time, until I stepped forward and asked, "An old classmate?" Zack froze. "When did you get here?" He took off his coat and draped it over me. "Why are you wearing so little? Don't catch cold." This was something I had taught him. When he saw me wearing too little, whether I was cold or not, he had to ask if I was cold. Ideally, he should directly take off his clothes and drape them over me. Zack had always done very well, but I did not like wearing scarves, because I was afraid they would rub against and ruin my makeup. So I had never taught him to tuck in someone's scarf. That was his subconscious action. I looked at him and repeated, "An old classmate?" Zack nodded. "She's quite pitiful. Her son has ALS. All of us pooled together 100,000 for her." Someone happened to pass by and casually added, "Yeah, her grades used to be so good. Who would have thought she'd end up like this now?" It seemed Zack had not lied, but I still leaned against the wall and smiled at him. "Zack, do you remember what I told you? I hold grudges, and what I hate most is betrayal. Either never let me find out for the rest of your life, or the person who betrays me will definitely not get away with it." Under the dazzling lights, Zack slowly blinked. I remember. From that day on, I never heard the name Regina again. So much time had passed that I had actually forgotten. I never expected that. As it turned out, for more than 3 years, they had never cut off contact. Chapter 5. Countless large transfers appeared before my eyes. Only then did I learn that Zack actually had 2 cards. One was his salary card, which he handed over to me. It received his daily salary and a year-end bonus. But he also had another bonus card, and his regular monthly bonuses were deposited into that card. I knew the password to this card too, but according to him, it was an abandoned card no longer in use, so I had never checked it. But the bank statement before me showed that more than 3 million had been deposited into this card over 3 years. Yet the remaining balance was only 0.33. All that money had been transferred to an account at a downtown hospital. Regina's son had a rare disease. Who the money had gone to was beyond doubt. I tightly clenched the bank statements. They were spread flat across the table, shocking to the eye. Suddenly, a warm flow surged from beneath me. I realized something. This year, Zack and I had been trying for a baby, and before this, my period had not come for more than 2 months. With a creak, the door was pushed open. Zack was back. Chapter 6. He casually tossed his keys onto the entryway cabinet. His gaze swept over the bank statements on the table, but did not stop there. Seeing my pale face, he did not ask any questions either. Instead, he walked straight past me and began rummaging through the drawers of the coffee table. How much savings do we have left? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and forced myself to endure the discomfort in my body. Then I stacked the bank statements one by one and spoke slowly. What are you asking that for? Zack's back paused. Then he quickly said, a friend's child is sick and being resuscitated. They urgently need a sum of money to save their life. I lowered my head. Does it have to be right now? Yes. Zack anxiously pulled open every drawer. Where did you put it? I frowned tightly. The pain in my abdomen made it a little hard for me to breathe, but I still tried my best to speak. Zack, I'm not feeling well. Can you take me to the hospital? Julia! Zack snapped, cutting me off. This is a matter of life and death. Can you stop being so dramatic? Whatever is going on with you, can't it wait until I come back? But I was also a matter of life and death. Finally, I looked at him and tugged the corners of my lips indifferently. The card is in the drawer of the vanity in the master bedroom. Before I could finish speaking, Zack had already rushed inside. He was so anxious that he even accidentally hit his knee, letting out a cry of pain, but he still did not stop, charging straight in. On the table, Zack's phone screen lit up. There was a latest message from Regina. Zack, why aren't you here yet? Save me. He's about to beat me to death. He said that if I don't give him 500,000, there's no way he'll let me divorce him. So the life and death matter belonged to someone else after all. After Zack got that card, he hurriedly grabbed his phone. The moment he gripped the doorknob, he suddenly seemed to remember something and turned back. If your stomach feels uncomfortable, take some stomach medicine first. Once I'm done, I'll come back and take you to the hospital. I still nodded calmly. Okay. Even though, when I lowered my head, I could already see the spreading bloodstain. The twisting pain in my abdomen felt like being cut by a knife. But I did not tell Zack the truth. With a bang, Zack slammed the door shut. I closed my eyes and immediately called my best friend, giving her the address I had found for Regina in advance. Help me catch him cheating. For real. My best friend screamed. No way. This is really happening? What about you? When are you getting there? I exhaled heavily. I'm not coming. I think I'm having a miscarriage. I'm going to the hospital first. After I handle that, I'll come back and prepare for the divorce. Chapter 7. By the time I arrived at the hospital, the pain in my abdomen had already lessened a lot. After the ultrasound, it was confirmed that I was 10 weeks pregnant. Threatened miscarriage. The doctor said, I'll prescribe you some medication to protect the pregnancy. Stay in bed and rest these next few days, and try to avoid strenuous activity for the next few months. I was very surprised. The baby is fine? The doctor smiled. There is some bleeding, but with proper care, there shouldn't be too much of a problem. In that instant, I could not describe what I felt. Once, Zack and I had both looked forward to this child's arrival. We had even specially cleared out a nursery for the baby. Zack had also said that once the child turned 1, our whole family would travel together. After 10 years of marriage, because he was busy and I was busy too. We had not even had a honeymoon. Clearly, I had looked forward to it for a long time. But now, after a long silence, I slowly closed my eyes. I said, I want an abortion. I held grudges. If I was betrayed, I would never let it go. So this child, I hoped, would be born in love, not grow up in hatred. Chapter 8. After the medical abortion, I got out of bed with a pale face. Celine had already sent me more than 99 messages. I opened them, scrolled to the top, and read them one by one. That bastard. Zack really cheated. Does love really still exist in this world? I recorded the video. It's pretty disgusting. Prepare yourself mentally before watching it. The last message was, he found out I was there. He begged me not to tell you. What should I do? I slowly typed back, agree to it for now. I needed a little time. As a fellow lawyer, Zack knew how to ensure that he benefited the most in a divorce. But luckily, I was also a lawyer, and over the years, I had always fought on the front line of the industry. I had carved out paths of rebirth for countless girls with nowhere else to turn. This time, I was simply fighting for myself. After returning home, I casually stuffed the pregnancy test report into the drawer of the coffee table in the living room. Then I opened the video Celine had recorded. By the time I finished watching, it was already 7:59 in the evening. When the time changed to exactly 8 o'clock, Zack's message arrived right on schedule. Every night he temporarily planned to work overtime. He would video call me exactly at 8 to report in. But today was a little different. He did not call. He sent a text message instead. I have to handle a divorce lawsuit tonight. Working overtime. I'll be home late. I stared as the lit screen dimmed. Finally. I was so disgusted that I dry heaved and rushed straight into the bathroom. Physiological tears rolled down uncontrollably. I raised my hand to wipe them away, found all the bank cards in the house, and booked counter service at the bank for the next day. Chapter 9. Over the next few days, I sorted out all the joint assets between Zack and me. Our savings totaled $3 million. There were 3 properties in total, 1 vacant, 1 rented out, and 1 we lived in. After calculating everything, I could get $3 million. But over the past 3 years, in order to pay for Regina's child's treatment, Zack had also spent $3 million. A trace of mockery flashed through my eyes. Zack would not divorce me so easily, compared with fighting for the greatest benefit. The first step I needed to take was to divorce him smoothly. The next step was to ruin his reputation and leave him penniless. A plan quietly took shape in my heart. When I began putting it into action, Zack left early and returned late, running himself ragged over Regina's divorce. I still considerately played the role of wife. Until the eve of Regina's divorce trial, I went to a cafe, bought more than 50 cups of coffee, and brought them to the law firm. Chapter 10. The law firm was brightly lit. I looked toward the deputy director's office. The door was tightly shut, and even the blinds were drawn so closely that nothing could be seen. Everyone looked up from their busy work and greeted me. Julia, why are you here so late? Did you take on some big case? I handed out the coffee I had bought, 1 cup at a time. Isn't Zack going to court tomorrow? This case happens to be my specialty, so I came to help take a look. Someone inevitably said a few extra words. We were just discussing it. Zack hasn't been on the front line for so long, so why did he suddenly take on a case? Turns out Julia arranged it. I smiled and did not deny it, carrying the remaining 2 cups of coffee toward the deputy director's office. No one stopped me. I pushed the door open and entered. I finally met Regina for the second time. She had gained some weight. In my memory, when I saw her 3 years ago, she had been very thin. So thin she looked like a sheet of paper that could collapse with a single breath. She had worn a yellowed white shirt, her hair messily gathered up, her lips dry and peeling. She had looked extremely miserable and pitiful, but the Regina now had been well cared for. Her complexion was rosy, and her eyes shone like a doe's. Apart from the bruise on her forehead, she was completely different from before, as if she had become another person. She was wearing a white haute couture dress from Brand D, brand new, without a single wrinkle. Brand D was my favorite brand to buy. I had an identical white dress. It was the birthday gift Zack gave me 2 years ago. I suddenly remembered that when Zack gave me that dress, the size had been too small. I was 170 centimeters tall and had always worn M, but Zack had bought an XS. After discovering that the zipper could not be pulled up, he merely said calmly, "How could the salesperson be so careless? I'll exchange it tomorrow." Taking the wrong size was not common, but it was not impossible either. So at the time, I had not taken it to heart. But now that I thought about it, Zack had clearly bought 2 identical dresses and mistakenly given me the other one. Looking at Regina's radiant face, I could not help curling my lips. "Miss Regina, so it's you." The final word fell lightly. It landed so heavily that Zack suddenly stood up, his expression changing in rare alarm. "Why are you here?" As he spoke, he even looked behind me, as though searching for someone. "Celine didn't come with you?" Chapter 11. I sneered inwardly, but my expression remained perfectly calm. "Weren't you working overtime today? I came to bring you some warmth." "Why would Celine come? She and I haven't seen each other for over a month." "She's been busy lately." Zack let out an almost imperceptible sigh of relief. He hurriedly pulled out the chair and let me sit in her seat, then introduced her. "Julia. This is the old classmate I mentioned. Regina. You should have met her before. The case going to court tomorrow is hers." I smiled brightly and extended my hand toward her. "Hello, Miss Regina." She looked somewhat frightened. First, she glanced at Zack. Then she gathered her courage and looked at my hand, as though I were some terrifying beast. I let out a soft laugh. "Is Miss Regina afraid of me?" "Don't worry. I don't eat people. And no." The color drained from Regina's face as she hurriedly reached out and shook my hand. Before I could say anything, Zack had already spoken helplessly. "Julia, don't scare her. She's quite timid." "Is that so?" I smiled noncommittally and flipped through the documents in front of me page by page. The file was very thick, compared to what I had seen before. There were many more details, but the only thing that had not changed was that Regina was not asking for any property. I pretended to be surprised. The man committed domestic violence, gambled, and cheated. Logically speaking, she could fight for a larger division of assets. Why is Miss Regina not only refusing to fight for assets, but even planning to leave with nothing? I raised my head and looked at Zack, smiling sweetly. "That isn't your style, Zack." A rare trace of panic flashed through Zack's usually steady eyes. He quickly looked away, seeming to rack his brains over how to answer. But unexpectedly, Regina spoke first. "Miss Julia, I asked for that myself." Her eyes reddened. "As long as I can divorce him smoothly, these worldly possessions aren't important at all." I did not continue pressing her. Instead, I asked Zack to make me a cup of tea. He knew I was allergic to caffeine, so he immediately turned and left the office. In the spacious room, only Regina and I remained. For a while, only the rustling sound of me turning pages continued. When I reached the last page and closed the file, I looked up, only to meet a face from Regina completely different from before. She looked at me calmly and asked, "You know everything, don't you?" Chapter 12. Regina really was not some pure little innocent rabbit. I was not too surprised. I only smiled. What exactly is Miss Regina referring to? I took out my phone and opened that video again. "Are you referring to this?" When I clicked open the video my best friend had recorded for me for the second time, I was already able to remain expressionless and drag it directly to the most crucial part. Regina, her face covered in blood, rushed into the video frame. Zack's expression changed drastically, and a panic I had never seen before appeared on his face. He directly pulled Regina into his arms. A restrained light flashed in his eyes. "Him again?" He gnashed his teeth, his eyes surging with towering rage. After being with Zack for so many years, I had never seen him like that. His anger was completely undisguised. His reason had been completely swallowed and controlled by emotion. When I saw Zack like that, I finally realized that perhaps, from the very beginning, I had only been suitable for him. Not impulse, passion, or deep love. Regina merely curled up in his arms, crying in despair. The first time I watched it, when Zack kissed her forehead with pity, I had directly turned off the video. But this time, I forced down my disgust and continued watching with Regina. Regina raised her head and carefully kissed the corner of his mouth. The two of them kissed passionately, their breathing growing urgent. Zack even reached out and took off Regina's coat. The video cut off abruptly at that moment. Regina's expression was ugly as she pressed pause. Just as well, I had no interest in watching the next indecent scene either, so I lazily put my phone back into my bag and looked at her meaningfully. "Does Miss Regina have anything else she wants to say to me?" After a deathly silence, she said, "Actually, you're the mistress." Chapter 13. I could not help laughing, almost doubting my own ears. "What?" Zack and I were high school classmates. We were each other's first love. If my father hadn't forced me to drop out and marry someone for a bride price of $200,000, how could there ever have been anything between you and Zack? She looked at me expressionlessly. Julia, do you really think Zack loves you? Aren't you worried at all? After I get divorced, how will Zack treat you? Regina slowly curled her lips into an extremely mocking smile. They all say where the money goes, the love goes. I only had to cry a little, and Zack spent over $3 million on me for the past 3 years. Every gift he bought you, he bought an identical one for me, or even one that cost more. If it weren't for the fact that I was married, do you think there would have been any place for you? She stood up and lifted the thick file, lightly shaking it in front of my eyes. Then she looked down at me from above, enunciating every word. Instead of confronting me here, you'd be better off thinking about what you'll do after the divorce. Once I'm divorced, there's an even better man waiting to marry me. But what about you? A second-hand woman someone else has used for almost 10 years. I really don't know what you have to be proud of. Do you really think you can still find another buyer? The office fell into deathly silence. I looked up at her, at the pride and smugness in her eyes, at how she, also a woman, could actually say such vicious words. The final trace of hesitation in my heart completely vanished. Miss Regina, thank you for helping me provide evidence. What? Regina suddenly froze. I took out a recording pen, pressed the stop button, and saved the recording. Then I played it. Regina's voice echoed through the room. Zack spent over $3 million on me. Every gift he bought you, he bought an identical one for me, or even one that cost more. I raised my brows and took out a complaint I had prepared in advance from my bag. I handed it to her. All the money Zack spent on you belongs to marital joint property. I have the right to recover this portion of the expenses. This is the complaint. Miss Regina, you'd better transfer that money back into Zack's and my joint account within 7 working days. Otherwise, the lawsuit you'll have to fight in court won't just be your divorce case. Chapter 14. I did not look at the way the blood instantly drained from Regina's face. I turned and left directly. When I pushed the door open and walked out, Zack happened to be coming back. In his hand was a steaming cup of my favorite chrysanthemum tea. You're leaving? He seemed a little surprised. The tea has just finished steeping. Forget it. I smiled at him. You have court tomorrow, so I won't disturb you too. That's true. He nodded. There will be plenty of chances to drink tea. I did not answer. Instead, I brushed past him and strode forward. In the rest of my life, I would indeed have many chances to drink tea, but there would probably be no more chances to drink tea brewed by him. Chapter 15. After I went home, washed up, and finished my skincare, I put on a facial mask and watched an episode of a variety show. It was rare for both my body and mind to relax. At 11 o'clock, I went to bed on time and soon fell asleep. But at 1 in the morning, I was awakened by a faint rustling sound. Familiar footsteps came from the living room, very light, yet very hurried. I did not turn on the light. I lifted the covers, stepped barefoot onto the floor, and walked toward the bedroom door, leaning quietly against the door. I looked into the living room. In the pitch-black night, only a few scattered patches of moonlight lit the room. Zack was crouched on the floor, drenched in sweat, opening drawers, searching through them, then closing them again. He searched every drawer in the living room, but he could not find what he wanted. Finally, just as he turned and prepared to walk toward the bedroom, I softly said, "Are you looking for the bank card?" Zack's whole body stiffened, and all color drained from his face. "You're not asleep?" After a deathly silence, he exhaled heavily and forced himself to remain calm. "I have something urgent. I need to withdraw some money." "What urgent matter?" I raised my brows. Zack stammered and changed the subject. "It's not convenient to say right now." "Where did you put it?" "I have to withdraw the money immediately." With a snap, Zack stepped forward and turned on the bedroom light. The glaring white light made me close my eyes instinctively. When I opened them again, Zack had already picked up the debit card I had deliberately placed on the vanity. Just as he turned hurriedly and was about to put on his shoes, I finally spoke faintly. "You won't be able to withdraw the money." Zack froze. "What?" I said calmly. I entered the wrong password 4 times. The bank card will be frozen for 24 hours. Zack's face darkened violently. What? I remained calm and continued. I'm curious. What did Regina tell you? That her child urgently needs $3 million in medical expenses? Or that her husband is threatening her, saying she has to bring $3 million before he'll divorce her? Zack's breath hitched, and his index finger curled slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. I smiled and stated it directly. I asked Regina for that $3 million. All the money she spent during the existence of our marriage belongs to our marital joint property. I have the right to recover it. So I sued her. Zack's face turned deathly pale, finally realizing something. He hurriedly said, Julia, did you misunderstand something? That $3 million was only because I pitied her and lent it to her for the sake of our old classmate relationship. She will pay it back. Enough. I could not help interrupting him. All the disgust I had desperately swallowed back during this period was finally released without the slightest concealment. I looked at him coldly, enunciating every word. Zack. I watched the video Celine recorded. Chapter 16. With just that sentence, all color drained from Zack's face. He stood stiffly in place, a dazed look flashing through his eyes. But very soon, he adjusted his state, just like when he had once learned how to love me. Even when threatening me, he was steady, calm, and calculating every step. Julia, there's no need for us to make things this ugly. After a pause, he turned around and pulled open the drawer of the coffee table. A flash of realization crossed my mind. Just as I realized what was inside that drawer, Zack had already taken out the pregnancy test report and slapped it onto the table. You're pregnant. He spoke with certainty. I can promise you that from now on, I'll cut off all contact with Regina, but the condition is that you must withdraw the lawsuit and take over her divorce case to ensure that she divorces smoothly. He looked at me deeply, calculation flashing in those eyes. Julia, you don't want our child to be born without a complete family, do you? What's wrong with us continuing as we were before? Everyone says I'm a good husband. Everyone envies you. As long as you want it, we can keep living like this. We can live like this for the rest of our lives. I could not help laughing. Zack, do you really want to avoid breaking your perfect man image that badly? That makes sense. What kind of perfect man is a divorced man? Especially a man who cheated. Julia! Zack finally could not hold back and interrupted me in fury. Watch your wording. What good will making this into a big scene do you? Julia, don't talk about me creating an image. How are you any different from me? You know that after divorce, you'll never be able to live such a privileged life again. You know even better that, after divorce, as a single mother, perhaps no man will ever want you again. That's why you're using this lawsuit to force me to compromise, isn't it? I've already promised, as you wished, that I'll never contact Regina again. What else do you want? After hearing those words, all the anger in my heart suddenly died down. I suddenly realized that the man before me was not worth my anger at all. I even smiled. He looked incredulous. What are you laughing at? Because you're ridiculous. I curled my lips and gently shook my head. Zack, are you really that confident I won't divorce you? What do you mean? Zack's expression instantly froze. I already aborted the child. Zack looked at me in disbelief. What did you say? The child. You. I shrugged and directly threw a divorce agreement I had prepared long ago at him. You are the party at fault. I want 70% of the assets. Chapter 17. Zack answered without hesitation. Impossible. I guessed as much. I smiled mockingly. With your ability, if we fight the divorce case, splitting our assets equally won't be a problem for you. But you can afford to wait. Can Regina afford to wait? Zack froze. I continued. I've filed for divorce. Once the procedure is completed tomorrow, all our marital joint property will be frozen. I also sent a copy of the recovery list for Regina to her abusive husband. Tell me, if he finds out that during their marriage, you gave her so much money, what will he do? After discovering that Regina can obtain so much money, will he still divorce her? Will Regina really be beaten to death by him? I spoke with regret. She is so weak. It doesn't seem completely impossible that she could be beaten to death. But, as long as you sign the divorce agreement, I'll withdraw the lawsuit immediately. After the bank card's 24-hour freeze ends tomorrow, you'll be able to withdraw the money and help Regina pay back that $3 million. The marital assets between Zack and me, converted into cash, totaled $6 million. Adding the debt of $3 million, that made $9 million. I took 70% and Zack 30%, meaning I would take $3 million, while Zack would take $7 million. However, Zack needed to first repay Regina's $3 million for her. In other words, the marital joint property Zack would ultimately receive would even fall short by $300,000. I did not know whether he had understood this calculation, but after a brief hesitation, he immediately refused. That is her debt. Why do you think I would definitely repay it for her? I had calculated everything, yet I had not calculated that this would be the result. I once thought Zack simply did not love me, but I had not expected that Regina was nothing more than this either. He loved no one. He only loved himself. I could not help laughing. I took the divorce agreement back and turned to leave. Fine, if you won't sign, then we'll fight the divorce case. Just a reminder, my complaint will be sent to the deputy director's office. I have plenty of time, and I have thick skin. I'm not afraid. But, is lawyer Zack not afraid either? You are the deputy director of a law firm, yet you yourself are involved in a divorce case. Zack's whole body stiffened, and his breathing became rough and heavy. He looked at me in disbelief, his expression cracking. After all this time, I finally saw a trace of him breaking down in his eyes. He was so furious that his entire body trembled, his chest rising and falling, in the deathly silence. Just as I reached out to close the master bedroom door, Zack finally took a sudden step forward and snatched the divorce agreement from my hand. He did not say another word. He merely remained silent and signed his name on it. Chapter 18. The divorce procedures between Zack and me were completed quickly. On the day I received the divorce certificate, I also submitted my resignation letter to the law firm. When I walked out of the building, the sky was clear and bright. Life had never felt so refreshing. Celine came forward holding a bouquet of flowers. Happy divorce! I had just accepted the bouquet with a smile, when Regina walked over, her eyes full of provocation. Miss Julia, I warned you long ago. Look, how did it end? I won. Celine dug at her ear. Where did this mad dog come from? Barking randomly? Am I supposed to congratulate you too? You picked up a piece of trash and you're actually quite proud of it. Looks like Zack hasn't told you yet. The divorce assets were split 70-30. Zack's cash flow is now only $7 million. But you still owe Julia $3 million. What are you going to do? Regina's face turned pale, and she flew into a rage out of humiliation. What are you so proud of? It's only $3 million. Zack's annual bonus alone is more than $3 million. Do you think he can't pay it back? Oh, really? As far as I know, Miss Regina, you haven't gotten your divorce certificate yet, have you? I smiled and blinked, then took out my phone and played a recording. I also sent a copy of the recovery list for Regina to her abusive husband. After discovering that Regina can obtain so much money, will he still divorce her? That is her debt. Why do you think I would definitely repay it for her? The smug glow on Regina's face rapidly faded. She stared at the recording in disbelief, her voice trembling. No, impossible. This must be edited. I could only sigh regretfully. If this were edited, then why hasn't Zack helped you pay back the money yet? Miss Regina, if you still don't repay the money, my complaint really will be sent to your husband. No, he will definitely help me pay it back. Regina immediately turned around and ran upstairs like a madwoman. Zack can't possibly ignore me. You must be lying to me. Her figure quickly disappeared around the corner. Celine and I could not help exchanging a smile. Come on, let's go eat hot pot. It was only a divorce. There was nothing a hot pot meal could not solve. And if there was, then we would have 2 meals. Chapter 19. After we ordered the soup base, Zack called me like a madman. I blocked him without the slightest hesitation. After finishing the hot pot, I said goodbye to Celine and went straight to the airport. With several million in cash in hand, I had no intention of looking for a job. Instead, I signed up for a month-long tour group, planning to properly enjoy myself. That month, I had an extremely good time. So much so that when I came back and heard Zack's name from Celine, I froze hard for a moment. So this person had already become that unfamiliar to me. That day, Zack and Regina completely fell out. He refused to pay back that $3 million for her, and Regina directly caused a huge scene at the law firm. Then the complaint you sent to Regina's husband also took effect. That abusive man actually found his way to the law firm too. You have no idea. That day, the whole law firm was in utter chaos. Zack's reputation in the entire industry was ruined. He was fired by the law firm the next day. Celine spoke with her face full of excitement. And that wasn't even the end of it. During the month you were away, Zack tried every possible way to find you. He even asked me several times. Starting around 10 days ago, he suddenly stopped coming. I asked around and found out that the abusive man had actually gone to him and demanded $1 million in prostitution fees. Zack couldn't produce a single cent. So that man grabbed a kitchen knife and chopped off Zack's thing. I was shocked. You mean? Yes. Celine nodded like a chicken pecking rice. Zack has been turned into a eunuch from now on. Ha ha ha. I burst out laughing. In the end, I could not hold it back either. Chapter 20. After that day, I began researching the market. In the end, I rented an entire floor of an office building and opened a law firm of my own. Apart from taking on regular business, I also opened a hardship channel dedicated to providing legal aid for women. As long as a woman in hardship passed verification, all services would be provided free of charge. On the opening day, I invited many old friends to come help. Unexpectedly, in the bustling crowd, I saw Zack. He had lost far too much weight compared to before. His whole body looked exhausted to the extreme, and most of his hair had turned gray. It was hard to imagine that the once high-spirited man would one day become like this. During a break in the busyness, Zack came to find me. He awkwardly rubbed the hem of his clothes and asked if I had been doing well lately. I nodded faintly. Pretty well. He looked at me hesitantly, as though he had something to say. I had no time to waste with him, so I asked directly, "Is there anything else you want to say? I still have things to do." Zack immediately reached out anxiously and grabbed the corner of my clothes. I wanted to say. His voice was hoarse, his face gray and dim, and he spoke with great difficulty. "Julia, do we still have a chance to remarry?" He lowered his head, not daring to meet my eyes, and only muttered, "I've always wanted to tell you not to deny all the good I did for you just because Regina existed. I admit that over the years, there was indeed an element of performance in what I did. But if I really had no feelings for you at all, how could I have acted it out?" By the end, he seemed to have moved himself, and his eyes were even a little red. "Julia, I'm not an actor. My affection for you back then was all real." Who said he was not an actor? He had acted for so many years, vividly and convincingly. Even now, he was still acting. Unfortunately, looking at his pitiful appearance, I could not help laughing. Then my gaze slowly moved downward and stopped at a certain place on his lower body. I said nothing, but Zack quickly withdrew his hand. His face flushed bright red, so ashamed and furious that he seemed to want to die. Before I could humiliate him, he had already turned around and fled in a panic. Watching his hurriedly disappearing back, I knew that Zack would never appear before me again in this lifetime.